From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Welcome. Our guests today are Tom Nichols, author and professor at the Naval War College, and Gabby Morrongiello, White House reporter at the Washington Examiner. And on that note, we will go to our issue, which is issue 1, Stuck in the Storm.
President Trump entered a political storm this week when his newly appointed lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, declared that Trump had personally reimbursed his longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. But this wasn't just any reimbursement. This was a reimbursement of $130,000 for money Cohen had previously paid to porn star Stormy Daniels in order to earn her silence over what Daniels alleges was an affair between Trump and her in 2006, after Trump had married his wife, Melania. Why does all this matter? For 2 reasons. First, because although the president has now corroborated Giuliani's account, he had previously denied knowledge that Stormy Daniels was paid to stay quiet. Second, because if Cohen was reimbursed using Trump campaign funds, the Trump campaign would have violated federal law.
Pat, as I thieved on Special Report, you said last week on the show that the key here was for Trump to move the debate into the political domain. Is Giuliani doing that?
This is not what I had in mind. I think Rudy has damaged the credibility of the President of the United States. Michael Cohen has got some real problems as a consequence of this. Also, I think that Rudy has terminated his own career as a legal spokesman. But I will say this issue is moving into the political realm because of a decision or because of points made from the bench by Judge Ellis down in the Eastern District of Virginia, where he accused basically the Mueller investigation of going beyond its franchise, of trying to flip witnesses, and of going beyond what they were told to do. And I think this does move it into the political realm, which is where this thing's eventually going to wind up, I think, in the House. And I think that's Trump's strong area.
Eleanor.
Yeah. You can't just dispel with all of the legal maneuverings, though. And I think the lies this week, it's not just Rudy's credibility, it's the president's credibility. And the lies that he has told about Stormy Daniels, and also the fact that we now learn from his former doctor that he dictated that glowing health report that he had the best health ever of anybody who'd be in the Oval Office. These may finally be the lies, the 3001 and 2 lies that bring down the House of Cards. And while I think the Stormy Daniels suit is a sideshow legally, I think the path is still there to uncover financial crimes and collusion, yes, tampering with the election. And I look at the body language of Rod Rosenstein. He seems pretty confident that he knows what's going on and something big is coming.
Mr. Nichols.
Well, I think I'll join everybody in saying, heck of a job, Rudy. And I think, I think the administration wants to move it into the political realm because there's always about 35% of the people who don't care. That he's really made his point that he can do anything and not be held accountable in the way any other administration would be. If this were any other administration, this would be a full Chernobyl-level political meltdown in every way. Payoffs, campaign finance, ties to the Russians, Paul Manafort. And so I think, to Eleanor's point, no matter how it moves into the political realm where his people will say you could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, the law is not political. There are going to be legal problems that they cannot wave away simply by saying that they're popular.
Madam.
I mean, I think the last 36 hours were completely disastrous for this administration. Sending Rudy Giuliani out there to say something one day and then the next day almost having whiplash because he was walking back what he had said. The president was out there saying that he needed to get his facts straight, so severely undermining his lead legal attorney now. And I do think that, one of the interesting things about this, if you watched the president's speech yesterday at the NRA convention, is that despite all of the legal troubles that he's facing, his base, that 30%, is sort of in the fight with him. You could see that he was feeding off the energy, that they were supporting him. He talked about this.
Tom, more important than that almost, look, there are these problems, and there's credibility problems the president's got and what he said and how he's behaved himself, and maybe they're going to bring up things under the Federal Election Commission. But the President of the United States cannot be compelled to testify before a grand jury. The President of the United States cannot be compelled to testify as a witness. I think Trump will defy the request or demand that he testify. So where does this wind up with regard to the president? It winds up in January with the special prosecutor and the whole crowd deciding what they're going to send into the House of Representatives.
Well, and so,
because
and
I
so
think
Democrats wishing that he would be gone tomorrow, or at least in the next year, better get in there because it's going to be a long siege. And Trump supporters also are going to be ready for a long siege.
Are they ready to draw the gun of impeachment?
Well, if impeachment gets underway, it would be next year.
Okay.
And you've got a lot of Democrats who say if they do get back power, they're not going to squander it on impeachment the way Republicans did with Bill Clinton. There are some lessons to remember from that era.
So at the end of the game, where do you, if you're talking about trying to drive Trump from office, which I think that judge indicated was exactly what was being done, I think you get into a fight between these two forces, and the only way they get Trump out of there is through the impeachment process, which Eleanor says they won't dare do.
Well, wait a second. You need 67 votes in the Senate. Until
Sure.
I see 67 votes in the Senate, it's fool's gold.
Okay. On that note, we're going to issue 2, the Tehran job.
This is where they kept the atomic archives, right here. Few Iranians knew where it was, very few, and also a few Israelis.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel announced this week that Israeli intelligence officers recently smuggled half a ton of documents and disks out of Tehran and into Israel. According to Netanyahu, the files proved that Iran had a covert program to develop nuclear weapons. While Netanyahu said that the program was suspended in 2003, he also claimed that Iran's retention of the files proved that it intends to one day build nuclear weapons. How did the world react? Well, all except one of the powers that signed the 2015 Iran nuclear accord said that Netanyahu's news wasn't new. President Trump, however, claimed that the presentation is an indictment of the Iran deal. Your moderator believes Trump will announce a U.S. withdrawal from the deal on May 12th.
Eleanor, is this Bibi's gift to Trump?
Oh, it's a simplistic view of intelligence from long ago, meant to discredit the current deal. It has nothing to do with the Iranians cheating on the current deal. They've followed it to the letter. They haven't improved their behavior in other areas, but the deal is functioning as it should. And it's actually, the Iran deal is the model for what this administration might hope to get from the North Koreans. But I agree with you, he'll probably scuttle it in some fashion, although maybe if we're lucky, there'll be a little exit ramp where he'll kind of keep it open and hope to build something having to do with ballistic missiles. May not be completely dead.
Probably won't sanction the Europeans. Professor?
I don't, well, I should say I don't speak for the U.S. government on any of this, but I don't think this changes anything. You know, the Iranians had a nuclear program. What a shock. Right. We knew this. I also think...
But they did lie about it in the GC.
Of course, and the Iran, I mean, I was an opponent of the Iran deal. I think the Iran deal was a bad idea, but we're stuck with it now. And I think one of the things the administration's not thinking about is the Iranians would love for us to walk out of this. I think they're hoping we walk out of it so that they can turn to the other P5+1 and say, well, we tried. Right. Now the handcuffs are off. Those sanctions are not going to come back. The Obama administration was never being forthright about, you know, snap-back sanctions and all of that stuff. And I think it was a bad deal that we should try and make the best of now, but we're not going to. But I don't think that this
without the deal, we're in a worse situation.
I'm not sure Iran wants a bomb, quite frankly. That's why they gave it up for $100 billion. But let me say this. Yeah, I think you're right, the Americans are going to get drop out of it, but I'm not sure we're going to drop out of it totally. I think to keep the Europeans aboard, they're going to bring them in, say, let's negotiate over ballistic missiles or something like that, and add to it. But I think basically the Iran deal is a good deal for Iran. Iran doesn't want a war with the United States. I don't think they want a war with the West.
And also the money that everybody said, oh, we gave them all this money. This was their money. You know, the president conveniently overlooks that little fact.
Gabby, do you think President Macron's recent visit with the president has enabled the Europeans to perhaps avoid some sanctions on European companies if we withdraw?
Well, I think that he and the visit by Merkel certainly had some influence on this decision, you know, ahead of the May 12th deadline. I think that both of them are obviously encouraging the president to remain in this deal, or at least make some adjustments to it, but without fully pulling out of it and dismantling it. But I do think that that presentation by Netanyahu is something that's going to be invoked in the coming weeks as President Trump approaches this decision.
Would he force the Europeans to reimpose sanctions, in which case the whole thing collapses? I don't know that Trump is going to do that. I agree with you.
But he can't do that, can he?
He can't do it.
Well, here's the thing. He can reimpose the American sanctions
on the European companies.
Well, and does he go there and impose them on the Europeans? I don't believe he's going to do it.
Yeah.
And how much of this do you think, Eleanor? You said about North Korea, right? That's the backdrop.
Yeah. If the North Koreans are not going to give up fully their bomb, and so you get that same kind of deal. Inspections, hopefully, and you restrain their program. You you freeze it for a period of time, and then you hope that more enlightened leadership comes.
Concluding comment.
We're talking about this as though the president has deep and substantive objections to this deal, when in fact the biggest objection is that it's a deal Barack Obama negotiated that he has said he would get rid of. So in a sense, we've just had a far more sophisticated conversation about it than I think has happened inside the White House.
So maybe if Obama came out and said, "I hate the deal,"
keep it right, exactly.
Trump would love
if we could get this deal with North Korea, get all their bombs out of there, inspections and things, we would be elated. I would say a Nobel Prize for Donald Trump.
Right, okay. All right. I think in the president's defense, I think one of the things, he sees that money flow right into Lebanese Hezbollah, and he thinks that aggravates me. But look, we'll see what happens. Anyway, issue 3, Saudi secrets.
The New York Times reported this week on a secret escalation by the Trump administration in support of Saudi forces fighting Houthi rebels in Yemen. According to the Times, a 12-person U.S. Special Forces A-team has been operating on Saudi soil since late last year. Its mission? To help Saudi forces target Houthi ballistic missile units before they can attack Saudi territory. The Houthis have fired a number of missiles at the Saudi capital, Riyadh. And note this, both the U.S. and Saudi Arabia blame Iran for providing these weapons to the Houthis.
Tom, obviously you're a U.S. government employee, so we have to caveat that. But professionally, do you think the United States has an interest in providing this support with the Green Berets?
I don't think this is our fight. I mean, interestingly enough, Pat and I will usually disagree. I think that Pat's fights don't go much further than, say, Burlington, Vermont. But even a roaming
Chesapeake Bay.
Exactly. But even a roaming globalist like me would say, I'm not sure what the point of this is. And I think there's a deeper problem here, which is that you're not just providing aid to the Saudis, who I assume should be perfectly capable of defending themselves at this point. There's a deeper problem that by involving ourselves in this, the president and the White House are, in fact, in some sense, playing Saudi royal politics. And that's a really complicated game, and I personally don't have enough confidence that this administration knows what it's doing to play at that level.
I think what they're doing now is, look, the Saudis got themselves into this battle against the Houthi. It's been a couple of years now. It's a human rights disaster in there with starvation and cholera, and the United States, I think, would like to end it, but if you end it without a victory for the Saudis, I think the big prince is going to have real problems in his own country.
Jared Kushner and his big friendship with the Crown Prince have drawn the United States into this war. The Houthis have posed no direct threat to us.
No threat at all.
It's an unconscionable aggression on the part of the Saudis. 8 million people threatened with famine, and nobody says anything about it. I mean, the president is so admired in all his scandals that nobody pays attention to these little wars that he's getting involved in.
But Gabby, the president would probably say, right, that they're firing ballistic missiles, the Iranians, through the Houthis at Riyadh. He wants bin Salman to reform the economy. I mean, what do you think the president, as it pertains to Saudi Arabia in particular, how much do you think the president has a personal rapport?
I don't think he has. I think he has a good relationship with the Crown Prince, but I think a lot of that is driven by Jared Kushner and his interests in the Middle East.
Is Jared Kushner a real power broker in this regard, do you think?
Yeah, more so than the president probably is. I think he has a better understanding, arguably, too, of what's going on there.
I think Pompeo's going to shove him aside. But look, what is the evidence that Iran is getting ballistic missiles into Yemen when we control all the seas around Yemen, we control all the airspace above Yemen, and the Saudis are on the border and Oman's on the border? How are the Iranians getting ballistic missiles?
It's part of
it's some of the stuff that was already in there that they've captured.
It's part of the web that Netanyahu is weaving in order to kind of up the ante for, I think, a shadow war between Iran and Israel.
Tom,
which
do
is
you see that
disturbing.
potential for a regional conflict here with the Israelis, Syria, Iran? I mean, a lot of this is...
No, there is a regional conflict. It's already underway, and it's happening in multiple directions at once. And again, even if this were, say, an administration with the Middle Eastern chops of, George H.W. Bush or James Baker or George Shultz, I would be concerned about the level of complexity that we're engaging here. The fact that, I think Gabby's right, that, Jared Kushner knows more about this than the president. That doesn't make me sleep well
exactly.
to say that, we're wading into the most complicated politics in the world and we don't know what we're doing.
The real factor that could ignite this is Iran responding to the attacks on its troops in Syria, responding against Israel.
Correct. All right, well, we'll see, and Israel in the same way. When we come back, city taxes and a spitting dragon. And tell your friends they can watch us anytime from Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern at our website, McLaughlin.com. Look at my prompter reading.
For more than a century, the Greater Washington Board of Trade has focused on growing our regional economy. We work every day to foster collaboration, build pipelines for skilled workers, embrace innovation, and attract investment. We must think, plan, and act as a region to better leverage our shared assets so we can continue shaping and advancing a vibrant regional economy for the next 100 years.
Generation Hope is a nonprofit organization that helps DC area teen moms and dads become college graduates. We provide them with tuition assistance, one-on-one mentoring, and crisis support until they graduate.
Crises along the way. There have already been a lot of crises.
My mom passed away, and I do everything for my mom in memory of her. I dedicate this graduation to her on Mother's Day.
When a young parent earns their college degree, the likelihood that that child will go to college goes up, and they will earn $1 million more over the course of their lifetime.
Naraya Omar.
It's a tremendous return on investment. And all of these issues that we care about, homelessness, child welfare, poverty, this really makes a difference and it changes lives.
Congratulations, have a wonderful weekend.
Issue 4, Amazon versus taxes.
Online retail giant Amazon this week suspended construction in Seattle, pending a planned city council vote that would impose a tax on companies earning revenue over $20 million a year. The tax would amount to 26 cents on each employee's working hour. In 2021, the tax would shift to a 0.7% payroll tax. But while Seattle says the tax is necessary to reduce homelessness, Amazon says it is being unfairly targeted. But note that Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos may also be trying to send a tax shot across the bow of other city governments. After all, Amazon is currently considering city bids to house its second multi-billion-dollar headquarters.
And one of those bids is Washington. Gabby, how do you read this?
I mean, I think, first of all, they're definitely firing a warning shot at a number of the cities that are competing for HQ2. They want to extract the best offer, and this is one way to send a signal to all those North American cities. The other thing that's really interesting about this is, this comes several weeks after a bill in California failed in the state legislature that would have enacted zoning reforms that would have dealt with this affordable housing crises that we're seeing in Seattle and California, San Francisco, other cities. They weren't able to get that through, and I think a lot of these progressive cities are failing to grapple with the tough politics of zoning reform and liberalizing zoning laws, and so instead they're turning to taxing labor and things like this that's going on in Seattle right now, and it's completely repelling businesses from coming to these cities.
Do you think this will make the president like Bezos more very quickly?
That's a fraught relationship, and I don't see it improving anytime soon.
I think it's a creative way to raise money when you don't want to raise taxes on the broad populace. And Seattle tried it a year ago and it failed. I'd be amazed if it actually went through this time. But it's a pittance. Amazon would pay $20 million, according to a report in the AP under the current law as it's being drafted. I mean, that's chump change. And now Amazon is going around the country basically extorting better deals. Here in Washington area, you have Washington, Maryland, and Virginia competing. filling up the wheelbarrow with tax breaks and benefits. And I mean, I think I would like Amazon to back off, but I don't think they will. They've got all the cards.
The power of the transnational corporation when you got all these states are begging them, please come in here, like
Who are you,
third
Bernie?
world countries. Pardon?
Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, listen, he's got a point.
That's right.
No, I mean, these transnational corporations are very powerful, and these states, it makes them sort of bidders for their, you know, to get the money and get all this put into the country. And it shows a real transition in power worldwide, I think. You got, I think 50 of the largest entities in the world now are corporations as opposed to countries. But look, it's a fair fight, it seems to me. If you want to persecute them, that you take the consequences.
Am I left to speak up for capitalism?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree 100%.
you know, yes, cutting better deals and seeking a better environment. That's called, you know, capitalism.
But the workers are the ones that get screwed. I mean, wages don't go
up. But the consumer, wait a minute, stop.
When Bezos said he was going to Seattle, I'm like, why? Could he not find a more business-friendly place, like, you know, say Greece or something? I mean, this is a way for the city to say, instead of building, because I'm sure the city's argument is, look, all these people are going to strain infrastructure and need housing. Okay, there's a way to build infrastructure, which is tax all of the activities that these people will do. Their license plates, the places they eat, the things they do.
And
but
that's going to be popular. That's going to be even less popular.
So in other words,
pick your poison.
Well, the least popular thing would be if Bezos says, okay, I'm not simply going to pay a head tax for the privilege of the, you know, it's all like the Simpsons, you know, the entering Springfield tax.
But you're all right. It's fundamentally the free market operating here. If he wants to leave, okay. And if he wants to stay, negotiate a deal with him.
Well, in Seattle, they're hoping to work it out. And
well, there you go.
Concluding comment, very quickly.
Look, I don't have any problem with Amazon going around to these various cities and trying to get a deal that's going to help, you know, the cities that they're trying to build their HQ2 in. They're competing for the benefits of that.
I'm being screamed at. Good. Issue 5, the spitting dragon.
The Chinese military is escalating against US global interest. At least, that's what 2 stories this week suggest. On Wednesday, CNBC reported that China has installed advanced missiles on islands it claims in the South China Sea Spratly Islands chain. The Spratly Islands are just under 200 miles from the Philippines, which also claims the islands, and nearly 800 miles from mainland China. And note this, on Thursday, the Wall Street Journal reported that US military pilots in Djibouti, East Africa, are being targeted by laser beams from a nearby Chinese military base. So far, 1 US pilot has suffered minor eye injuries.
Tom, why is China doing this, and what should we do about it?
The real story underlying this is the disarray in this White House's foreign policy. Every country in the world is testing us now. The Chinese know that if they shine lasers at us, that's not going to go unnoticed. This is a way of saying, where are the edges? This administration, everything is up for grabs. And it's not just with China. Ukraine deciding to try to play the president on sanctions. The North Koreans trying to play the president on a summit. The Russians trying to play the president. I mean, this is every country in the world saying it's open season on the United States because there is no coherent foreign policy coming out of this White House.
Yeah, it's amateur hour at the White House, and the Chinese now have a president for life. They have a strategic plan. We shouldn't be surprised that they're being more assertive economically and militarily.
What would you do?
What would
to
I
challenge
do?
them, if anything? If you
what
were
would
president?
I do to challenge them? I would not.
I'd stop talking about she as my best friend, for one thing.
No, I guess I'd pick up the phone and call President Xi and say, knock it off, or.
Right.
China has declared the South China Sea inside its Monroe Doctrine. This is our sea. They're fortifying them. They're well down the road. We don't have any claim to any of those islands. The Philippines and the Vietnamese are the 2 that are sort of contesting it, but there's no reason the United States should battle China on behalf of the Philippine islands out there in the South China Sea. They're going to basically take that sea.
Right. Gabby, how much do you think this is the sort of ongoing battle with tariffs, and what do you think the White House angle on this is?
Well, I think I think Tom hit it on the head. This is. It really speaks to the inability of President Trump, despite his chummy relationship with President Xi, to actually calm China's aggression. He's in the middle of a trade war right now. You know, he just sent this high-profile delegation over to Beijing. They weren't able to extract anything from them. They didn't have any concessions made. They didn't return to the U.S. basically empty-handed. And so, you know, I think this is just another example of, despite that warm relationship, behind the scenes, there's chaos in the Chinese.
Where do you think the summit will be?
Singapore.
No,
Okay, interesting.
I think it's on the DMZ, to be honest.
Okay.
But I think, look, the Chinese are challenging us, and they're not backing down now. And so, I mean, but those lasers, I mean, that is a criminal act to shoot a laser at a pilot. And I think, frankly, if they do that again, we ought to respond right there in Somalia.
Bomb them.
Well,
I would attack the lasers if they try to knock your planes out of the sky.
I wouldn't
right.
be I wouldn't be escalating.
Okay, we'll be right back with predictions.
The McLaughlin Group is brought to you in part by Eric.org. Is your company trying to provide health and retirement benefits to workers across the country? The ERISA Industry Committee beats back taxes, mandates, and compliance burdens that make it harder for companies to provide employee benefits. Learn how Eric supports large employers at Eric.org.
For more than a century, the Greater Washington Board of Trade has focused on growing our regional economy. We work every day to foster collaboration, build pipelines for skilled workers, embrace innovation, and attract investment. We must think, plan, and act as a region to better leverage our shared assets so we can continue shaping and advancing a vibrant regional economy for the next 100 years.
Predictions, Pat.
Big week in the Middle East. You got the Iran deal. Trump will decide there. You got the 70th anniversary of Israel's birthday. You got the 70th anniversary of the Nakba. This coming Friday is going to be the big Friday for the Palestinian demonstrations in Gaza. Very tough week, perhaps.
Eleanor.
I think Chief of Staff John Kelly is on his way out. The President may find a soft landing for him. There will be no replacement Chief of Staff.
Okay, Gabby.
I think by the end of the summer we're going to see an event in the south side of Chicago between President Trump and Kanye West.
Really? And what will that event consist of?
Talking about black unemployment rates, things like that. I do think that those two are going to come together in some fashion.
Okay, Tom?
We're going to see yet more conciliatory gestures from the North Koreans because they know they're arguing with hawks inside the White House, but they know they've got the president hooked and they want to keep him hooked for this summit.
How do you think Bolton is doing so far?
I think when Bolton compared the Korean deal to Libya, that was his way of saying, I hope there's not a Korean deal, because Libya is not exactly the model the Koreans want.
I predict that President Trump will not impose taxes on European multinational corporations doing business in Iran, at least at the beginning, when he withdraws from the nuclear accord on May 12th. In lieu of a random fact, I want to draw your attention to Ada Bhatt. Ada is a Nepali-American Uber and Lyft driver who is designing drones, or friendly drones, that can save lives in the Himalayas and beyond. I recently wrote about Ada for the Washington Examiner. His is a pure pursuit of the American dream. Very great guy. If you want to contact Ada, please email kathysawley@mac.com. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and follow us on Twitter, please, and at McLaughlin Group, and visit McLaughlin.com. Cheers, as they say in England.